Thank you, and I recognize the chairman of the U.S. House of Representatives Budget Committee, Mr. Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Byer. Just to follow on Senator Lee's closing comments, I don't think it's too much to ask the president, who at one time, as senator and most recently as vice president, negotiated fiscal reforms in a debt ceiling negotiation. I am a little taken aback when people act like this is somehow unprecedented and wring their hands as if we're just completely out of control, or we can't raise the debt ceiling responsibly while dealing with this unsustainable deficit spending and debt. And we've done it. In fact, some of the most significant fiscal reforms have come out of a debt ceiling legislation and negotiations, and it only makes sense. I mean, I really think most Americans say, let me see, debt ceiling, evaluating the indebtedness of our country, its impact on our financial health and our future, and then act responsibly. I'm from Hale County, and we say, Hale. Every American family's doing that, not necessarily because they want to, but because they have to. And they have to more today, my friend, than they have in the past, because their wages and income are shrinking relative to inflation. It's fact that since January of 21, a family of four has lost $13,000 over an entire year. Now that's over $1,000 a month, and 6 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. I don't know how in the world they're doing it. But I think it is quite disconnected. And I appreciate that there are other ways to solve this than maybe the solutions that we've put forward. But to do nothing, or to say or suggest that we have to do a clean debt ceiling where it's reckless, is so out of touch with what the American people are having to do to tighten their belts and change their spending habits. That's why 3 out of 4 Americans say, we expect the president and my Democrat colleagues and all political leaders of this greatest country in human history to come to the table and act like adults. I am the proud author of the Limit, Save, Grow Act. I think we have to limit spending by right-sizing a bureaucracy that's 40% bigger than it was in 19. Let's just start there. It's 30% bigger from a discretionary spending perspective than it was going into COVID. CBO said that we'd be spending in 19, before COVID, this year, hundreds of billions of dollars less than we're spending today. We're suggesting we go back 6 months and apocalypse. People aren't buying that, and they're imploring and praying that our leaders come together and do what the House did, which is pass the debt ceiling. One that would pay our bills and protect our good faith and credit while acting responsibly, acknowledging that $10 trillion in 2 years, and again, Republicans have contributed to this problem over the years, and I'm the first to say it, and I'll say it at every meeting for credibility, because it's true. But $10 trillion in 2 years, 6 of which was added to the national debt, a sustained record inflation, soaring interest, nosediving into recession, closer to the precipice of a debt crisis, which we don't know when it hits, but when it does, you can't bail out of that one. Bail out of COVID and other crises. What if we have a war with China? How are we going to borrow the money at 123% debt to GDP when we're paying $600 billion in interest alone, not a single soldier, sailor safety net for seniors, anti-poverty program? That's going to triple in 10 years. In 2 or 3 years, we'll spend more on interest than the entire budget of the Defense Department. If that doesn't make you shudder to your core, and I don't care what your political views are or your affiliation, party affiliation, then you're not reading the same material I'm reading. Mr. Mulvaney, I've said a lot. I just ask you to comment about a debt crisis. We talk a lot about default. We've remedied that with our legislation. Do you worry about a debt crisis down the road at some point that could be catastrophic, maybe irreparable? And I know my time's expired. If the chairman would just indulge the
Short
gentleman.
answer is yes. As the former budget director, it's the thing that keeps you up at night. Again, the comparison to monetary theory holds, which is that, okay, it seems to explain things until it doesn't. And right now, we sort of assume that things are okay until they're not. And when they're not, I don't know what we do, because we've got no plan to get out of debt. Our plan right now is to continue to add to the debt. I think the budget that I wrote in 2018, or maybe the one right after that Russ voted, was the last proposed budget that we expect to balance in 10 years. You'd be hard pressed to balance the budget right now. You really would. It does worry me that we wake up one morning and people don't lend us money. And when that happens, we will print money because we will continue to want to spend it. And that's inflationary, and that's how great countries fail. And that's what worries me.
I thank Chairman Byer for his indulgence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arrington.